Hey everyone, this is Benny from JoyCamp, and next weekend on Sunday, April 23rd from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m., I will be co-hosting an event called Regeneration out in Big Bear, California at the Big Bear Lodge, featuring such speakers as Max Egan and today's guest, Bernhard Guenther of veilofreality.com. For anyone who's been waiting for our podcast to come back, it will be coming back regularly shortly. I apologize for the delay, but we've been busy, particularly with this event. So if you don't know about it yet, we have a video about it. Check it out, and hope to see you there. Tickets are selling fast, so please act soon, and we will see you in Big Bear. And for now, here is the interview I did with my good friend Bernhard Guenther. This is Benny, and welcome to the JoyCamp podcast. I'm sitting here without Kevin for the first time with another very good friend of mine, Bernhard Guenther. Maybe some of you are familiar with him already. If you're not, I highly recommend you get into his work. He's been a huge inspiration for me since even before we were friends. In fact, I can honestly say that it was his work, some of his work was really inspiring to me to start JoyCamp. I heard an interview with Bernhard and another friend of mine, Umberto, who's a good friend of Bernhard's, on a podcast a few years back before JoyCamp started, and it was very inspiring, and it was actually something that really fueled the fire for Kevin and me to be active and contribute in some way. And I'm honored to call him my friend. We just got back from a retreat together in Peru, which he facilitated, and it was a truly life-changing experience, and I'm just honored to share space with him. So, Bernhard, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Benny. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely my pleasure. First of all, you can find Bernhard's work on veilofreality.com.
Correct.
And he goes deep. He goes real deep. Deeper than a lot of, dare I say, truth seekers are willing to go a lot of the time. And it's actually, his work exposes an aspect of this matrix reality that I think is essential to understand a bigger picture of what's really going on here. So, yeah, if you want to give yourself any sort of personal introduction to the listeners who might not be aware of your work, something I'm not saying at the moment, by all means.
Well, basically, I'm also just a guy trying to figure out what's going on and doing the best I can also to work up and wake up, so to speak, to the whole matrix control system. And I grew up in Germany, came to the US 22 years ago, to Los Angeles, studied drums and percussion. And through that process, I was also starting to question the world more and more and dealing with depression and not being able to fit in. So I started to question everything we've been told and taught and tumbled down the rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. Right?
Oh, yeah. The hole,
the rabbit hole.
The never-ending hole.
So it's been quite a journey since then, going through many different phases. Currently I live in Topanga, which we are here.
Which we are in right now, which is a great little escape. If you're in Los Angeles like I am, it's always great for me to be able to drive not too far away to a place that doesn't seem like Los Angeles at all and be in nature and connect in that way.
Yeah. So besides doing online work on my blog, Veil of Reality, writing about different topics from esoterica to psychological work to history to politics, as well as getting to more fringe topics like the UFO phenomena and hyperdimensional matrix. But I also work as a body worker and coach to help people on their personal path. And really what comes down for me, and Benny and me, we've talked many times and we've met each other, is the most important part in this day and age when it comes to truth seekers is the internal process, the inner work we all need to engage so that we don't get thrown off in this chaos that's really happening as the energies are increasing, because there's a much deeper, higher process happening here with regards to the evolution of consciousness. And yeah, we just, as Benny said, we just got back from Peru, where I was facilitating a workshop with my Peruvian friend Fred to really go deeper within that process on an interpersonal level, right? Work on embodiment, emotional processing, and connect with nature, and especially connect with like-minded people, right? Where we can talk openly about these topics and also help each other heal, hold space, and share more our personal, vulnerable stuff, instead of what many of us tend to do, and I used to do, Benny as well, just be frantically angry at the metrics and controllers and shouting and trying to force people to wake up. And it's really not going to happen this way.
Right. Yeah. Because no one really wants to listen to you when you're yelling at them or arguing with them. And I'll go one step further and say most people don't want to hear you or learn from you, not you and specifically you, the proverbial you in general. People don't really want to be taught anything. They don't want their belief systems to be challenged very often. And so this helps. So Bernhard's work and the retreat we went on was a way to better harness our own selves so that we become better to all of mankind in a way. Yeah. We become better vessels for truth and can rein it in a little bit and dial it back and be able to communicate more on a more grounded level. And it was a really profound experience. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's talk a little bit about how we know each other, because like I said, I mean, I've been inspired by your work for a long time, well before JoyCamp, because you made some documentaries.
Right.
Yeah. One in particular, which is called?
Love, Reality in a Time of Transition. Okay. Then there's UFOs, Aliens, and the Question of Contact. Brilliant. And a shorter one, Know Thyself. Know Thyself. All three of them are available online. I highly recommend you check them out. But I actually first caught wind of you when you were contributing to the website signofthetimes.com or sott.net, SOTT.net. And you had an article where you commented on Burning Man. And that really spoke to me because I've gone to Burning Man several times. And I think that was in 2012, when I was having all kinds of mixed feelings about what Burning Man represented and what I was participating in. And you spoke to that truth in me that there was something off about that culture and that festival in particular. And I think I reached out shortly after that. In fact, I turned 30 in 2013, and I invited you to my 30th birthday party, and that was our first connection. And then shortly after that, we hung out, and we've been friends ever since. Which, I mean, reflecting back on it, it's amazing to me because at first I was just a follower of your work, and now here we are a few years later, really good friends. And that's for me on a personal level, that's a sign of progress. That's like a beacon on the path that I'm on the right path, that I'm friends now with someone that I respected and who's also been, helping me deal with a lot of my own stuff and helping me get to the next level with my own growth and contribution to the world. Yeah, and going back to the way we met, I was also aware of your work, before we met. And I was always, around on the internet, the JoyCamp videos. And I just love the fact, to use humor and comedy to really spread some seeds of awareness about some deeper topics and also give people something to think with a deeper message. Not really, what I liked, it was not really pushing information on people, but just, hey, make a little show out of it. Right. Just kind of use, humor and comedy in a creative way to help people awaken, so to speak, and spread some seeds. So I love it. And I remember we constantly meet. I mean, we always, interesting when we meet, it's like old friends. Yep. We talk for hours, 6-7 hours, just nonstop. And then we don't see each other for months because you're traveling, I'm involved in my work, and then we come back. And finally, we definitely connected in Peru. Oh my gosh. And also going back to what you said about JoyCamp, that was strategy on my part, because I knew I wanted to reach out to you after I had something under my belt. It was something that when I found out you lived in Los Angeles, first of all, I was like, oh my God, I should go get body work from this guy. And I wanted to know who I am and see that, I am of the same mindset. And I thought, well, what better way to introduce myself than through my work? So I actually waited until we'd actually launched JoyCamp. And actually, after JoyCamp had a little bit of a momentum, before I finally reached out, because I wanted to say like, hey, I'm Benny, I live in LA, and this is what I've been doing, to contribute. So it was like my
something like a resume almost before I reached out. So yeah, a little strategic on my part.
Well, it also, we both have. That's been like 4 years.
Yeah, it's been a while now. Because I turned, like I said, 30 in 2013, and we hung out shortly after that.
Right.
It was maybe the very end of the year, beginning of 2014.
Because it's interesting as our, works became popular, so to speak, and all of that. We're kind of part of the same scene, so to speak, meeting many of our heroes and peers, including Max Egan and others.
Right.
And there's also interesting interweaving of events and synchronicities in many different ways.
Mind-blowing synchronicities that I don't know if we're going to get into all of those on this show. But, that's also proof. I find that, the more that, definitely with the creation of JoyCamp, as I delved into my own truth, my own expression of that truth and contribution, the world opened up to me. I mean, the people that have come into my life as a result of JoyCamp are the proof that I'm on the right track. I mean, they are the like I said, the beacons that are guiding me, saying, well, this is, if I didn't create this thing, if I didn't decide to step into my truth in this way, we wouldn't be friends. I wouldn't have so many of these allies that I now have around the world. I mean, it's, as you step into that, as you get past that fear, as it were, people start coming into your life. That sort of cliche quote, your vibe attracts your tribe. It's true. It's a frequency. Once you start putting it out there, it comes back to you, and it's mutual respect. So it's no longer just I'm a fan of your work. We are on the same level. We are friends.
Right, and also ties into what we explored from the hero's journey perspective or esoteric work in terms of seeking truth and waking up, to really follow the call, that inner calling of really what gives you passion. With your acting and also your poetry.
They don't know about my poetry yet.
Ooh, sorry.
Oh yeah, go on. Tell them, because I've hinted at it.
I'll get back to that later. But also JoyCamp, where you combine your passion of your skill and art and and talent with what you want to talk about and reach people. And when you really follow the drive, that inner calling, and there will always be obstacles. It's not like it goes easy, especially in terms of speaking truth. When we put ourselves out there personally, we're dealing with attacks and trolls and all of that, and worse in the past than now.
Yeah, if you dare to speak up, people will attack you, whether they are liberal, conservative, or other quote-unquote conspiracy theorists or whatever. Right. As soon as you have a voice and as soon as you have a following, you are suspect.
Yes.
You might be a shill, which we get all the time.
Yep.
There's someone listening to this right now saying, they're both shills. Oh my God, I didn't know Bernhard was a shill until Benny started interviewing him. Or vice versa, who knows?
I know. Fallacy of association.
Yeah. But, I mean, the creation of the work itself was a way to harness that frustration in a way,
right.
I think a lot of people can relate to this. When you first start waking up to the nature of reality and what's going on, you start seeing how evil the governing forces really are. And for me, when I started becoming aware of that, it was the most important thing I'd ever learned. And so therefore I want to express it to everyone else, because it's literally life or death. It's like, oh my God, people need to know this. So when I'm in that state of my own shock of what I'm experiencing, and then trying to relate it to people from a level of, a fever pitch, and it's so urgent, and I'm not in a grounded space to relay the information, so they're not going to listen. If anything, I'm putting more distance between us. So then having to reevaluate and say, okay, well, what can I do that's effective, that will hopefully allow people to listen a little better. And that's where JoyCamp came from. It was therapeutic, but also a distillation of my own awareness onto a platform that could serve as a way for people to listen to and understand topics they normally wouldn't otherwise. And also for me not to be, the guy who is the conspiracy guy who I make fun of in the videos, the guy who is constantly just shitting on everyone's parade, and the turd in the punch bowl, and being that guy who's like, well, blah 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 blah, and people are like, well, fuck this guy, we don't want to listen to him. So figuring out how to communicate.
When then you almost it's like doing shadow work, like bringing out that other part of you, because I feel I can relate to it. We all have that conspiracy guy within us.
Of course.
Right? I mean, in the beginning when I tumbled down the rabbit hole, became more aware of what's really going on in the world and the atrocities, the way we are manipulated and oppressed. And it's naturally that you get pissed off at first.
Yeah, it's necessary.
The anger, like
Yeah.
it's just, and naturally you saw it also like out of your conscience and sense for justice and also like being so amazed about this information, you want to tell your friends, your family, and other people, right? And I call it my romantic revolutionary phase, listening to Rage Against the Machine and Wake Up and
Yeah.
and all of that, and pushing information on people, and it just created all kinds of backlashes in numerous ways, And then I, realized also on a deeper level, just looking at my own life, and you can relate to it, Benny, I'm sure, we didn't wake up because somebody was screaming at us and pushing information on us and all of that. It actually happened, I feel, for most of us because of our own suffering.
Yeah.
That was for me the catalyst of not being able to fit in.
Exactly.
Right? And not that, none of this, these social norms of success gave me any fulfillment. I was never like money driven or like needing to have that family, house, dog, but that like stuff, I needed more. I needed something more, real.
Yeah.
And that, that's when you take the red pill.
Exactly. And yeah, that understanding of, wait a second, why do I have to get a job? Why do I have to follow a career path? Why do I have to know what I'm doing with the rest of my life at 18 years old? What's that about? Who made these rules? Why is there debt? Why is there homelessness? How does a person own land? Like these concepts didn't make any sense to me. And then, figuring out how to work with that moving forward. And of course, when you commit to a path of truth, it gets dark. You got to I remember for me, when I said, I want to know the truth, I basically had to do a whole re-education and accept how dark reality really is and how much we've been manipulated and how evil certain aspects of the world are. And that's not for the faint of heart. I mean, if you're not ready to accept how ugly the world can be, then you're not going to get anywhere. You have to acknowledge the darkness in order to find the light. I mean, the rabbit hole for me led me back to myself. It's almost like once you have that, when you commit to that, when you say, okay, I want to know the truth, you have to clear away the cobwebs. You're like going through a dark tunnel and you're seeing all kinds of really disturbing, ugly shit. And you got to clear the cobwebs. And then when you can get through it, light starts to come through. And you start seeing the beautiful aspects of life. And they become even more beautiful because now you've seen how dark the other end of it can be, And that's where I've been at for the last few years, and now I'm navigating my way through that, and that's that's kind of the nutshell version of my awakening so far. Arriving back at this beautiful place of finding how to exist in this world that is being governed by really dark forces, and how to shine light on that darkness, and how to not let that darkness consume you and take away your life. You can be aware of it. But if you're letting it drain your energy, then you're becoming a victim to it just as much as anyone who's asleep, Yeah.
And as you pointed out, I can relate to that, and many of the listeners, I'm sure as well. Disillusionment is part of the process. It's inevitable, right? And not only in terms of really realizing what's truly going on, and the rabbit hole truly goes far and deep and even beyond the 3D matrix, which I'll talk a lot about, the hyperdimensional matrix and how we're manipulated and forces working through people, even through the psychopathic leaders who are essentially not really in control. Mm-hmm. Right? So we easily get distracted by the shadows on the wall in the 3D matrix and project all this hate and anger. And that frequency is exactly what the hidden forces want and feed upon. It sustains them. It's nutritious for them, right?
Yeah.
So in the end, they don't really also care about what puppet, who, Trump, whatever, Hillary's in charge. They just are out for the loosh. And right now, actually, with Trump being whatever in position of power, and he's just a puppet anyway, in the end of the day, with all the projections from the liberals against Trump and this and that, just plays into the hands of the matrix controllers, right? Mm-hmm. But going back to the part of disillusionment, that's unfortunately what keeps a lot of people stuck in the matrix and away from the esoteric saying, the path of access, so to speak, of truly taking the red pill, because the reality of what's really going on so many levels triggers cognitive dissonance in a lot of people. And for a lot of people, just taking in basic stuff, which for us is basic stuff at this point, like 9/11, for example. to accept that their own government or whoever has been behind the government would kill their own people is too much for people to take in, because it would turn around the mirror on themselves and what other believe they would have to question. And people don't want to avoid this. No, I have my career, my bank account, my public image.
Right. And that all means something, right? That means something. My job means something. It's all worth something, right? Like, look at this car I have. Look at the family that I have and the house that I built. Like, this is surely this can't be false because I'm experiencing it and it's real. Yeah. Yet I'm taking antidepressants and drinking, scotch every night.
Yeah. That keeps people from, that's why you cannot reach people by logic or presenting facts alone, because common sense is not a common anymore. And there's almost an unconscious self-defense mechanism of the matrix that works through people, right? And there's also ties deeper into an esoteric law of free will, right? You cannot give until it's asked for. You have to respect other people's free will, even if they choose to be asleep, right?
Yeah.
We can spread seeds of awareness, make people aware, but still it's an individual process, which we need to honor. And everybody in their own time, and there are different lessons to learn, right? We get into different topics or different talents to develop as well, how we can express ourselves. So it's a whole process, and there are different stages. But, what I see in this day and age happening, as we just talked about this earlier, with these increasing energies and this craziness in the world, which, as I said before, is just still the tip of the iceberg. Pizzagate, when we talk about pedophilia and all of that, it's nothing compared to what's truly going on.
Right. And it's like what Mark Passio said, it's not really an awakening. We're not experiencing that. An awakening would look like government, people who work in government quitting their jobs, military going home, police taking off their uniforms. That's an awakening. We're dealing with an awareness of the symptoms. Barely. We're starting to acknowledge, like, wait a second, there's a problem here, and the problems are, X, Y, and Z, but there's actually not a true awakening on a mass level happening. Like you just said, people can't even acknowledge that 9/11 was an inside job. People are still hoping that Donald Trump is some sort of like patriot or, crusader for, alternative thinking, which is a total trap, an obvious trap. And of course, listeners of this show, there are still some out there who think Trump's on the level, but time will tell. Yeah. That's all I keep saying. Time will tell.
Well, that's exactly also why the inner process, the inner deconditioning and deprogramming is really, really imperative in this day and age. And that's not an easy process. It's much harder than just taking in information intellectually. We can research, and not to denounce the intellect, we need to understand to a certain level, to a degree, how the show runs, right? We'll never figure it all out because there's simply too much information and the mind can go there. And you can even get lost in the rabbit hole, right? And truly become the neurotic, paranoid conspiracy theorist. We are projecting always outwardly, right? Which releases the tension and the frustration we have, but we will project it outwardly. And that's actually a waste of creative energy and keeps us from the inner esoteric chemical transmutation to let the fire burn within and burn everything away in terms of beliefs, conditioning, social, cultural programming, wounding, trauma, which we all have to varying degrees before we can truly then anchor the higher frequency to become the change we want to see in the world, which then affects reality, right? But this is not a very comfortable process. So,
enlightenment is a destructive process.
It is a very destructive process, right?
Yeah.
And it's, not the new age peachy way of just like all of a sudden you're enlightened and see love and light and have an angel singing, on your shoulder. No, it's a descent into the underworld. It's a rebirth experience, right? And the old needs to die for the new really to be reborn, where you're really connected to your true self, to your higher self, to spirit. And that's really what it comes down to the divine, right? To really become a conscious expression of that. And that's, again, it's an individual process, and we need to honor that in others, right? And really meeting them where they're at, and also develop compassion, empathy, because in the end, we're 7 billion people on this planet. There's not going to be any form of collective awakening anytime soon. There are vast different levels of soul lessons within each individual. There are even soulless people, psychopaths, and all of that. And the whole notion of evil, of fighting evil, right? We all get, I speaking for myself, and I know Benny can relate to the need to fight evil and eradicate it and fuck the psychopaths and all of that, right? But that, again, with that frequency, that feeds into the matrix, and as Neil Kramer said, that gets you caught into the second matrix. So it's really understanding from a bigger picture perspective, and I realize this more and more also from an experiential and embodied level, that evil, so to speak, is part of creation. It has its free will to exist. It's part of duality, right?
To live is to experience evil.
Exactly. And it creates actually the necessary friction for the evolution of consciousness. It's just if we keep reacting mechanically and don't come from 0 point consciousness through the embodiment process and respond, right, in order to transcend the matrix. And that's really what the work is about and what all the ancient esoteric teachings have talked about, which obviously has been suppressed, distorted, or, completely eradicated, like in the New Age and all of that. So it's not as Sri Aurobindo said, it's the road to heaven is not a royal road.
It reminds me of a meme that I saw, a couple years ago, that was sort of tongue-in-cheek, that said, awakening is an inside job. And at the time, I thought, this is really clever, and it spoke to me. But now, that sentiment means more to me than ever. I mean, it's a really significant statement, and it really does come down to the individual. The way I look at it, it's like if you can accept Earth and all life on Earth as one life, there's an infection. There's an infection that is infecting the body. So the Earth is the body, and there's an infection that permeates through and creates this cancer, this imbalance on the Earth. And those of us who become aware of it then become like the antibodies within the body. We become the good bacteria, the probiotics, the white blood cells. So it becomes an individual responsibility to embody that change, to become personally that change, not be someone who just, goes down all the rabbit holes and absorbs all the information or gets in fights with people in debates and stands on their soapbox and preaches, but really embodying that change that is necessary for there to be a rebalancing of life on Earth within the body. Yeah.
Now, and what you mentioned, the embodiment process, which really entails also getting out of the head. Just like I said before, and it's necessary not demonizing the intellect and the logic, but it has its limitations, right? If you're just aware of how the matrix works on an intellectual level, but not disconnected from your body and disconnected from your emotional IQ, which is really important, and your heart frequency, then all your intellectual knowledge is not going to do anything really at all, right? You may be smart on a conceptual level, but you have not embodied, and in order to access higher knowledge, gnosis, we need to get into the embodiment process there in order to really tune into nature, the divine, and be so connected that you really are also connected to your intuitive guidance, your own sovereign being. So you don't give it away to authority. So you're also able to discern truth from lies and don't, get also not into victim consciousness, or like looking for somebody to save you and all of that, right? So that embodiment is really key to also tap into non-sensory perception beyond the five senses, right? Where we really tuned in, like we experienced when we were 9 days in the jungle, right?
Was it only 9 days?
It was 9 days.
This felt like a lot longer than 9 days. I felt like I was there forever.
Yeah.
At certain moments, it felt like I was never going to be back at home in my apartment with my girlfriend. It felt like that was it. I was going to be in Peru forever.
There was a timeless aspect to it. We were in the high jungle where the Andes meet the Amazon. Beautiful, staying at the Shirapa Manta Lodge. Beautiful people who have this eco lodge literally in the middle of the jungle. And there's a river and there are waterfalls, and just immersing ourselves in the nature, with all the insects. And I mean, the Amazon is as wild nature as it gets.
I'm convinced now that the rainforest is half insects. Half of it is bugs.
I think, yeah.
It's half,
probably even more.
Half trees and plants and earth, but it's also half bugs. Yeah. They're everywhere. And they're huge. Like grasshoppers the size of my hand will just land on you out of nowhere.
Oh, we had a big, remember the spider? The huge spider.
Oh my God, the spider.
In the shower.
Yeah. Like, nope, not going to use shower number 2 tonight. Yeah, really just bugs that you can't even imagine are there. But going back to something you said about, you mentioned esoteric teachings and gnosis. And so what do you say to those people who think that that's all just, conjecture, or it's not real, or, the people who say you can't, the sort of like the mystical aspect of life is not worth exploring because you can't prove it one way or another.
Right.
And they say that it's bullshit, and it's even tied into the New Age movement and all that.
Right.
Like, what do you respond with to that?
Well, there's some aspects to pseudo-mystical stuff, and as I said before, a lot of esoteric teachings have become distorted or corrupted or suppressed. We see a lot of that in the New Age. But truth is mixed with lies, right? So it's more the subtle discernment. And I have to say, like, as I said before, gnosis or true mystical or spiritual experiences, the mind, the logic cannot prove it or even understand it. It's impossible, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not a fallacy, anything in terms of the trivium. And as I said, we need to learn critical thinking, the basis of it, to understand how intellect works, but not make it the driver, right? Because there's a much more accurate voice, a nonverbal voice, which ties to the embodiment process, the inner marriage of the male and feminine, connecting to the feminine, to the wholeness within, which is connected to the wholeness of nature and the divine. And, listen to this nonverbal response of what is truly, when we make decisions in our life, what is aligned with our true selves, what information to pursue, what to cast off, what truly resonates, and what doesn't, and not mistaking resonating with wishful thinking or fear and all of that. So, but we need to tune the reading instrument, which happens to this self-work. But back to your question in terms of esoteric stuff and what listeners may think. Well, first of all, if people are not familiar with my work, I suggest to go to my site, Veil of Reality, and in my writings, I refer to various teachings, and they all talk about the same thing on the base level in their own ways, words, allegories, and metaphors. And, for example, there's esoteric Christianity before the church corrupted it, before all of that, and this trilogy Gnosis by Boris Moraviev, right? It's a brilliant work. You got to read through the biblical gloss, but there's a lot of esoteric truth in terms of the self-work process and transcending the matrix. And he also talks about the hyperdimensional matrix and forces working through us and other people to keep us from awakening, in his own terms called the general law. Then there's, I draw from Sufism, who also talks about the jinn and the hidden forces, or the Gnostic teachings of the archons, and all of that. Or shamanism,
or demons even.
Wetiko, Native Americans, so all of that. So I go beyond the whole 3D setup and, really like understanding that alchemical inner work, the great work, as it's called, the alchemical work, to really like transmute lead into gold, which is nothing external. It's lead into gold, meaning from, matter into spirit, right? Within ourselves. So, but as even all the teachers said, don't believe anything until you can verify for yourself, right? And this kind of verification doesn't happen by applying the trivium or logic. It happens by engaging in this process, internal process, and there's certain techniques, even psychologically, working with shadow, Jungian psychology, or inner child work, to also basic understanding of our different bodies, the emotional body, the intellectual body, the spiritual body, and all of that, how it all interacts. And then you will see in your own process. And I can see now, after many years, now I see myself tapping more and more really in the present moment, to really connect it to nature, more content and grounded, not denying reality, not avoiding, but really more connected and not making decisions from my head. I do not make decisions from my head anymore. I have gotten rid of the addiction of doing and not feeling productive, which has been, as a German, always been hard for me just to do nothing.
The misconception that being busy is a good thing.
But, right,
You're
exactly.
busy. Oh, good. You're busy. Oh, good. Oh, being busy is good.
Yeah, exactly. How are you doing? Busy. Oh, good.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. Great. You're working hard.
How are you doing? I'm great.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm great. I'm great. Yeah. I'm really busy, working hard. Things are good. I can't complain. Can't complain. That's a good one. Yeah, everything's fine.
Yeah. But was going to say, so with that process in terms of, verifying for yourself, and going back to what I'm experiencing, I'm, as I said, not making any decisions from the head, but this nonverbal guidance from my gut, deep in my belly, which really tunes into more some more subtle sensations and respond to life rather than willful doing. And what you see emergence, that's the beginning of a true spiritual life. I'm not talking about New Age spirituality. I'm not talking about religion, anything outside of yourself. You see that there is a higher force, a higher guidance, right? And that nature speaks to you like the divine or nature is always guiding us, helping us in form of symbolisms, subtle synchronicities. If you can tune in and read it and experience it and hear the voice, the subtle voice,
right?
And that's really also the key in this day and age we're in. Really, what these times we're in is the apocalypse. And apocalypse is not the ending; it's the unveiling, right? And it creates a lot of friction and triggers and all of that. But if you use that energy internally, and break down the false programs and really get into the fire of inner alchemical transmutation, you open yourself up to this divine guidance. You will actually realize on an embodied level, not logical, that you're taken care of, that everything is fine, not an illusionary New Age belief or whatever, but it's this embodied knowing, gnosis, which is most often, we talked about this with a lot of experiences we had in our personal lives recently, especially in Peru, are very hard to put into words because language is so limiting.
True that. Yeah. Pause. What did I want to say there? Oh, yeah. Someone once tried to debunk synchronicity to me. They tried to explain to me they tried to scientifically break down how synchronicity wasn't a real thing. I'm like, how can you practically explain synchronicity? It's something you experience it. Who are you to deny me the experience of the synchronicities that I'm observing? In fact, I mentioned on one of the first shows we did how I'm in a flow. I'm in an energetic flow. I have a relationship with the energy around me, and I say yes to life. I know when to say no. I face my fears. I take challenges as opportunities, and I'm a brave person, and I'm open to new information. I'm not married to any set of belief systems, and I'm in a flow. I don't know where exactly my life is going, but I know it's the right direction, and I'm constantly being validated through the synchronicities I experience, the people that come into my life, the experiences I have. And to say that that's not real, or to say I'm perpetuating some agenda, is just bullshit. I mean, again, who are you to deny me that experience? And I choose to take meaning in everything. And it makes, even if it's, it makes life more fun. It makes life more exciting. Like, wow, okay, here's this thing that keeps popping up. Like, I'm going to explore that and see what this leads to, rather than saying, well, it's just an arbitrary coincidence. Who cares? And it makes life more exciting. And as I sink into that, the world opens up to me in ways I could have never imagined. And it's not always easy. It's not a cakewalk. It's challenging, but it's about utilizing those challenges, finding the silver lining, finding the lesson, and then you get into a flow.
And that's the key. Any challenge is literally just a lesson disguised. And that's, for me, my view on life. All these are lessons for the sake of the evolution of consciousness and your soul, to embody the soul, to become a more realized being, right? But when you get a trap of outward projection, blame, victim consciousness, or get upset and all of that very reactionary behaviors, then we cut ourselves off from that guidance, from that source, right? And I have myself make it harder on myself than it had to be. And many people make themselves so hard on themselves. It's sad to see, right?
Yeah.
Like fighting, themselves outwardly, right? So to speak.
So let's go back a little bit. We mentioned it briefly, however you want to term these hyperdimensional forces. Again, they've been mentioned throughout time. Archons, Watiko, demons, daemons, whatever. And you said the words hidden forces. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, hidden forces is the term Sri Aurobindo uses, founder of integral yoga. And I really like that term because it encapsulates everything, whatever name, culture, tradition wanted to give these forces. It ties also into the UFO phenomenon, reptilians, aliens, which are basically paraphysical, hyperdimensional entities that can somewhat manifest physically, but the whole UFO phenomenon is actually a hyperdimensional phenomenon, and the documentary I made with Umberto goes deep into that, UFOs, aliens, and the question of contact. But the hidden forces basically what it comes down to, hermeticism, as above, so below.
As within, so without.
So on the basic level, we're not on top of the food chain, right? So we're not on the ladder of God's eternal creation, on the top of the ladder. But there are other realms, which obviously our visual perception is very limited, right? There are other realms, other densities and dimensions with beings inhabiting who have their own agenda and life form and purpose, so to speak. They are not projections of our mind or psychological issues and all of that, right? And the negative ones, they are basically in control of the matrix control system. And I'm really like giving a very simplified explanation in a nutshell here, because we are their food source, and they feed off of lower state frequencies, right? Anger, any form of projections and emotional wallowing and sexual pathologies and all of that, which they create through us and through the psychopathic leaders, right? Who are basically possessed by these entities, creating chaos and war to create more suffering and fear, and that's the frequency they feed off of. Food is not necessarily physical, but consciousness is food, right? And that kind of frequency. So that's the game they engage in, right? And also especially anybody who's in the process of waking up, these individuals being target more tenfold, which is brilliantly
They go after your weakness.
Right, after your weakness, like, the film The Matrix, Agent Smith inserting himself into all kinds of people and programs trying to keep Neo from awakening,
exactly.
Right? And the machines feeding off humans, a great allegory of the hyperdimensional matrix. So these hidden forces are part of creation, right? It's the dark side. There are positive forces out there as well, but careful not to buy the New Age pill, right? They're not here to save us or bail us out, or the Galactic Federation of Light is going to land and take over the Cabal or whatever.
Right.
Take down the Cabal.
Yep.
So they are guiding us, but more subtle ways, because they also know we need to learn the lessons in our own way. And again, the guidance comes through this embodiment process, where we really tune into this nonverbal guidance and respond towards life and the synchronistic encounters. And no, the hyperdimensional matrix aspect and all these hidden forces, what various esoteric traditions have talked about, I couldn't prove it to you logically or by today's standards of science, right? And Sri Aurobindo, in his work, which I'm really impressed by, just recently, like a couple of years ago, got to this work. At first, I thought he's just another yoga guru, and I'm kind of done and over with the Eastern stuff, right? Even though I practice yoga, but there's more to yoga than the physical workout. But I've read 4 books of his work, Integral Yoga, and still no mentioning of any yoga poses, but really that inner work, that, that clearing and also understanding, being aware of the hidden forces, how they work through us, and how free will is really an illusion. You need to earn free will, right? Most of all, what people think at free will are the mechanical conditioned reactions, So reading about the hidden forces, it really also, confirmed a lot of my own experiences. What he said, it's also important in the process of awakening to develop what he calls yogic consciousness, which is this higher state of being through the esoteric self work, to also develop extrasensory perception, where you can sense these forces, right? Me personally, I'm not a clairvoyant. I don't see energy. I never claim to. I say that. But I can sense more and more when these forces are trying to get me. I've successfully released myself of entity attachments through a sort of a self-exorcism, right? With stating my boundaries and other practices. And I can sense it working through others, sometimes trying to get to me, right? And again, people may deny it or think it's not provable, and I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. Well, for me, when I first started, the idea of an archon, when that concept was first brought up, when that first entered my awareness, I had to really think about it. Because I've always been, even as a kid, I was open to the idea of aliens, and it was very interesting to me, and extraterrestrial beings coming to Earth, and UFOs, and all that. And the idea of archons, as I let it sink in, I never was adverse to it, but I thought, okay, this is adding a whole other layer to my awareness. And it started filling in some blanks for me because on a human level, the end game makes no sense. So on a human level, when you see the powers that be, or powers that believe they be, as Max says, governing the world and destroying the world, making the populace sick and dependent, destroying the resources, and leaving it just this, this ruined mess. Like, what do they have to gain? Ultimately, what is the goal? It doesn't make sense if it's just power and money, because first of all, they're creating the money. Money doesn't even exist, so they're in control of the money. They already have the power. They already have all the resources. So what is the end game? When you add in this archonic, or whatever you want to term it, the hyperdimensional aspect, things start to make a little more sense because it fills in those blanks. There is an agenda that is beyond just human wants or human domination, right? That's how it started making sense to me. It's like, oh, if you distill it down to the lowest common denominator, this hyperdimensional aspect starts making a lot of sense.
Right, and you couldn't go even deeper or ask the question, what is actually human nature?
Touche.
Like when people talk about war, people always say, oh, it's just human nature, it's ego, and all of that. But now with my experience, what I've learned and embody more and more when I go into a city in LA, what I see is not human nature. It's like an alien-infested virus, the Wetiko virus. Mm-hmm. And the pathology has become normalized. We're so disconnected from our original blueprint because these forces have engaged in genetic modification for thousands and thousands of years, and everything is kept to or initiated to keep us in this frequency prison of fear, of ego consciousness, slave to the five senses, of separate consciousness, right? And all rooted also in the fear of death. Every little fear we have is the fear of death and the constant survival, the materialistic survival and more. And as Benny said, if you look at the whole matrix structure on a physical level, it just doesn't make sense. What's really the payoff, right? And again, it's for the hyperdimensional forces, it doesn't matter who's in control. In the end, on the 3D level, it's not the Zionists, it's not the Jesuits, it's not the Rothschilds, it's not the Illuminati or any secret society you can name, right? All these are also puppets to these forces. Some of them may be more consciously connected, engaging in black magic and, making a pact with the devil, so to speak, like the Faustian deal. But most of the controllers, they are completely unconscious and being used as shells, as portals for these forces to work through, right? So as long as we project or try to fix or approach the matrix on a 3D level, it's just a symptom. They're all symptoms. It doesn't address the man behind the curtain, right? And the key, again, is frequency. So it goes back to transcending the matrix, right? So if we fight them on their own turf with like fight fire with fire, create a violent revolution or physical revolution and all of that, it feeds into their agenda because they don't care, what puppet is in place. They just replace it with another one.
It's an energy harvest.
Yeah, an energy harvest. That's really what it comes down to.
So no matter how aware or awake someone is, if they're sacrificing their energy, if they're losing their life force to the matrix, it doesn't matter if you're speaking out against it, you're still giving into it. You're giving away your energy to this force.
Right. And also not to fall into the opposite end, into the New Age fallacy and just ignore it all, right? Or deny evil, or just think positive thoughts and all of that. That's a trap in itself, right? It's still being aware, know thy enemy, right? But from a much deeper hidden perspective, right? And then you understand that the work is very much more internal to raise your frequency, right? And raising frequency, again, is not a New Age approach of denying it all and trying to activate your higher chakras and all of that. It's very challenging work to go into the underworld, to battle the demons within and without, right? To clear yourself out, to really make room for this higher frequency to anchor itself, to truly embody your soul. And when you raise your frequency, you don't become subjected to these interferences or attacks anymore. Then the matrix cannot get to you like that. You don't feed into it. They cannot feed off of you. It's not a frequency match, right? So you're more able to exist, to be in this world, but not of this world, right? Which is the ultimate goal, right? And not trying to make it go away,
right.
so to speak.
Which is why it's so important to reconnect with nature and remember our connection to nature, because we are part of that life force, whether we like it or not. We're part of that. And what this system does is create a barrier between us and the abundant nature of reality. So it's important as we awaken to develop a relationship with nature, because that's recalibrating, that's going back home, that's returning to the earth. Just like I said, to live is to experience evil. Evil and live are anagrams for each other. Heart and earth are anagrams for each other. They are essentially the same word. So we align our heart with the earth. We're more in line with that flow, detaching from the matrix, which is trying to keep us from that.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was also inspiration for my Peruvian friend Fred and I to start the time of transition retreats in Peru, to get people out of their comfort of the civilized world into the middle of the jungle, right? And you already, just alone that setup alone, a lot of people don't realize how domesticated they are, used to all the comfort they have in their daily lives until they are in that kind of setting.
Perfect segue. So let's talk about Peru.
Yes.
And the retreat we just both came back from. So what was the name of the retreat?
Time of transition.
Time of transition. And I was a member. I participated in this, and I actually almost didn't go. If it wasn't for you really lighting the fire under my ass, and I felt it was such a kind gesture of you to say, hey, I actually have a spot reserved for you. It's yours if you want it. And that alone was like, wow, that's really cool. I mean, that shows how much you care about me and how much you see in me. And I understand that now more than ever, now that I'm back on the other side. But I went, and oh my, I got my ass kicked in the jungle. And in a way, I mean, again, with synchronicity, my trip to Peru symbolically was a culmination of years of work, years of self-work. It was in 2013 that the rabbit hole, like I said, led me to myself, which led to a lot of inner work and deep emotional healing and processing of trauma. And I've been on this sort of ride ever since of deep exploration into myself, and it all seemed to culminate in Peru. And you were witness to that. I don't even know where to begin. I don't know what to say about it. Maybe you giving an overview of what you experienced.
Well, maybe for the listeners to give an overview of what the retreat is about.
There we go.
Right. So the different workshops and embodiment practices. The key is really to get into the body, connect with nature, and connect with each other. We have a group of 9 people. The retreat could hold way more people, but we want a tight group of integrity, more private space, because Fred and I were also doing individual processing and healing work with each individuals. So, the retreat is also not for everyone. I make this very clear. It's really for people who already have a basic understanding of the matrix, statists. For statists, that
need not apply.
Would be challenging. Yeah, need not apply. But basically, I give some talks and workshops about the hyperdimensional matrix and the process of awakening, and then the embodiment process, what this actually means, and practices relating to that. We have talks about Jungian psychology and shadow work, right? And the hero's journey, the mythological analogy of the hero, tying deeper also in relation to the awakening process and hyperdimensional interferences and the traps towards awakening, including spiritual bypassing or getting lost in the 3D conspiracy matrix and all of that. But the most important part were the embodiment practices, and we had dance practices in the middle of the jungle, 5 rhythms dance, hikes in the jungle,
waterfalls. Waterfalls.
Swimming in the water, jumping down in the waterfalls. I mean, just also reconnecting with the inner child for just joy and enjoying life, man,
Yeah.
In this most simplest form, right? Away from any technology. Right, so we have all these practices, and as we get to know each other, we have sharing circles. It's beautiful, these sharing circles, because at the beginning, nobody knows each other. And then, over time, as people open themselves up, they trigger in a positive way the vulnerability in others. You share yourselves, your issues, what's going on. Some people share things they've never shared with anybody else because they are lost. They're alone. We had people coming from all over the world: Australia, Austria, U.S., Canada,
and all ages too.
All ages,
and all walks of life.
Yeah. We literally had people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s.
60s and 70s. Yeah.
Yes, it was amazing.
Yeah, a wide range.
So, and that it all, especially the group sharing in the circle, like as we open up and it goes deeper each night, it's so beautiful because it's really an embodied experience and practice of compassion and empathy, which puts you out of your own tunnel vision of your own shit, your own life and what you have going on, and realize, whoa, this person's also suffering in her or his own way, but about the same thing. So we're all in this together, right? But we're so afraid to sharing this vulnerable part because we don't want to appear weak or any of that. We need to be strong and all of this nonsense we've been told about, right? So all this leading up creates this beautiful group integrity, and it's a preparation for the medicine journey we all engage. And we're working with Wachuma, San Pedro cactus, beautiful medicine. During the day, it lasts for many hours. I think this one lasted for 14 or 16 hours.
It's still working, I think. It's still in me some way.
And we all take the medicine together. And Fred and me give also individual healing. I do body work and energy healing. And Fred is an amazing sound healer, working with ancient Peruvian instruments and creating amazing healing frequencies, which create a safe spot for people to process. And a lot of people were breaking down. I think you were the first one.
I was the first,
You felt the medicine coming on strong.
I am very sensitive to any substance going into my body. And I saw other people taking a second dose, and I only had the one, and it was kicking. It was already hitting really hard, and I was thinking, how is anybody able to swallow another cup of this stuff? Because it hit me hard, and I started shaking, and I started crying, and it was immediate emotional release. So I was the first individual to be worked on by Bernhard and Fred, and I went through a real deep emotional healing, clearing. I let out a lot of emotion that was rooted in all parts of my body. I felt my arms shaking, and my chest, and my thighs, and I wasn't necessarily attached to any particular memory or person or anything. It was just a release, and I don't know what it was like for you to experience me going through that, but it was very cathartic.
No, it was beautiful. As I told you as well, you were carrying a lot of stuff that was not yours to carry.
Which is the big lesson.
Which for all
one
of us,
the big lessons.
I've need to work through it a lot as well. All the pressure and the stuff we take on from all this bullshit's going on that's stored in our bodies, and it's, we not even aware of. Most people, it becomes so desensitized, right? And then the pressure we put on ourselves. I know you can be hard on yourself as I can be hard on myself.
Yep.
Because we want the truth so badly, right?
Right. And I take it upon myself. I have taken it on myself way too much, the responsibility of waking people up and changing the world and being one of the ones who really changes the way things are, and taking on that weight, on that responsibility. No one tells me to do that. No one said, Benny, this is your job, but I take it on as my job because I see the way it works, and I see so many people who are not understanding what's going on, and I'm like, come on, we need to wake up for the sake of humanity, for the sake of the world. We need to see what's going on, and I end up, like I said, taking on that responsibility, taking on that weight, which is why I sometimes have shoulder pain or back pain, and being able to release that understanding, wow, this is not my job. Doesn't mean I'm not going to contribute in my way, but it's not my responsibility to be the one who takes down the system. And that was a huge revelation for me. And that's something I've been thinking about already, but it really became clear during the ceremony. And then all kinds of other things. I really understood the concept of death for the first time under the effect of the medicine. And walking around the jungle, I actually went to go pee shortly after my session, and I was walking and I was looking at the trees and looking at the ground, and it's all simple, profound stuff, simply profound. Understanding that where there are leaves on a tree, there are leaves on the ground. Where there's green leaves, there are brown leaves. It's all one and the same. Life and death are one and the same. It's a cycle. If a bug dies, other bugs eat it. And really understanding my own death and saying, it's okay. Like, it's okay. I am going to die. I'm going to die. One day I'm going to die. And then there was a lightness that I felt in that acknowledgement of understanding, like, it's okay. This is all just temporary. I'm here, and what am I going to do? Waste my life being angry? I mean, that was honestly, so shortly after that, I was having a conversation with Fred, and, because the medicine was working so deep and I was going through I was having these minor revelations, major revelations, and I was clearing emotionally. And I was talking to him about how amazing the medicine was. And I was like, man, what a shame that this isn't accepted. That this isn't considered medicine by the world. And we're not using this. We're not allowing people the opportunity to get this sort of healing. And then my mind went immediately to big pharma and synthetic drugs and the trap that humanity is under and the prison that we have and that what we consider medicine. And I got so angry. And I felt myself get angry. And then I had the awareness of the anger. And it was that awareness of the anger. And I thought, my gosh, I am so sick of this feeling. I'm so sick of being angry. I'm so mad all the time. And I know that I can't be the one who changes the world. I just can't. Like I said, I can contribute in my way, but I cannot be the savior. And so it was such a weight lifted. It was such a small, simple, profound moment of, wow, this is my go-to. When I see when I see the injustice that this system breeds, I get angry about it. And what does that do? That just gets me into a heightened emotional state, which is a sacrifice of my own energy. And I can't live this way anymore. I see it. I see the way the system works. I get it. I can see the monster. But now it's time to work with it rather than against it, working with it in a way that I can I can be on top of it, not let it take away my life force.
And you're still having a even more profound effect on the world by anchoring that frequency.
Yep.
And vibrating on that level, because that also ties into the true secret of reality creation.
Yeah.
Right.
And speaking of frequency, I mentioned this to you before we started recording, but this is another minor thing, a minor yet profound thing, especially looking back on it. So the whole week I was being eaten alive by mosquitoes. I mean, they were biting me so much.
They were.
It got to the point where I was thinking, what would these mosquitoes be doing if I wasn't here? Like, what would they be eating? Like, they are only alive because I'm here to feed them. But because of that, I was tense. I was afraid of them. I was so upset, and my energy was, I was tight. I was like,
covering you up with all the long sleeves and the heat of the jungle,
and wearing the mosquito repellent, and I was like walking as fast as I could from point A to point B to avoid being bitten. And then I was talking to Fred about that, and he said, "Well, you could look at it like this: the mosquitoes are helping you to detoxify. They're taking away bits of your blood that you don't need anymore, and your body will then replenish the blood that's taken with fresh, new, clean blood." And I thought, wow, that's a really beautiful way to look at it. And when I let that sink in, I felt a sense of peace. And I came to peace with the idea of the mosquitoes and saying, you know what? Okay, fine. I'll keep putting the repellent on, but I'm no longer afraid of them biting me. And as soon as I had that shift, the mosquitoes stopped biting me as much. Mm-hmm. It was a frequency shift. So as soon as I let go and just made peace with it, they stopped bothering me. And that's profound.
That's right there. Yeah. That's a big insight.
Yeah.
Which also reminds me of what you said before about the realization about death and rebirth and this part of life. And like you said, it's a simple insight, but it's not simple, man. It makes sense for a lot of people intellectually in their mind. Oh, of course, the leaves in the tree and the dead leaves, so it's part of the same cycle, but the whole different level to experience that on an embodied level, right? To really tune into nature like that, right. Beyond mental concepts.
Right.
So there was an embodied experience. And I remember, what else happened, which was beautiful when Fred and me were working on Mate, who had also an amazing release and session. At the end of the session working on him, it started to rain. Right, and you were out there,
I brought
right?
the rain.
Yeah, so
I brought the rain.
Tell us about that.
Well, so as they were doing that, so I had stepped out, and this is in the same moment that I was like really experiencing the life and the death of nature, which is always there. They're equal. you know? And I was standing at my feet in the earth, and I looked up, and it was a sunny day, but there was a couple clouds in the sky, and I felt a couple raindrops. So I looked up at the sky, and I put my arms up, and I started asking for the rain. I was like, bring the rain, you know? Putting out that energy. And then before you know it, the rain just started pouring down on us. Pouring down. And I stood there with my shirt off, just basking in the rain by myself. And as I was standing there, slowly, one by one, everyone came out and joined me in the rain.
Taking off their clothes everyone breaking through after all, because everybody broke down and cried, and tremendous processing and trauma coming out. And I was breaking through to the light.
And it was washing away all that shit.
Talking about divine timing, that was the first time it rained. For 5 days since we're there.
Exactly. Yeah, and then it went away just as fast. Yeah. It was there for that moment. We all embraced it, and then the clouds moved, and it was a sunny day again.
Right. And then we went down to the river and skinny dipped in it.
Skinny dipped in the river, had a beautiful time. Yeah, it was so poignant and beautiful. But then, that night... So that night, so we had this, and again, this medicine works for a very long time, and you do it on an empty stomach as well. So we didn't eat... All day. We had some soup at night, but even the soup, I was having a hard time like getting it down. And that night, I started having diarrhea. I started having a purge in that way. And I was I was tired, and I was sort of in a peaceful state, so I sort of accepted. I was like, okay, whatever. Something's flushing out of my body, and it's good. But it continued. So once every 45 minutes or so, the whole night, I was getting up to go to the bathroom, which is an outdoor toilet, walking. Every time, walking past the shower that had that giant spider, by the way, walking past that shower. And every time I walked past it, I'd hold my hand up and say, respect. And I'd walk past the spider, go to the toilet, and release. And this went on all night. And then the next morning, of course, I didn't sleep very much. And I started feeling physically ill.
Well, remember we came down for breakfast, and I knew what's going on, you know. And then we started, because in the morning I teach Qigong. We always do Qigong practice as well after breakfast and basic meditation. I started Qigong, and I remember you were in the first row, and you started to sweat heavily and breathing and just like holding yourself.
Yeah, because I'm the kind of guy who, until I'm going to fall over, I will try to hang in there as long as I can. I saw that, and I felt something was up, and then you just left up, to your room, and I'm like, oh, that's fine. You know, you need to process, medicine's still working. But then... Well, then I felt vomit coming on. I felt like I was going to throw up, so I had to run to the toilet, and I mean, unfortunately, I got all the way to the toilet and completely missed the toilet, so I had this major vomit purge just inches away from the toilet, all over the floor. But it was violent. Yeah. It was violent, and I knew that you guys were in earshot.
No, we heard that, man. This was not a purge because of some bug or sickness or whatever. Like the noises you made reminded me of what I've experienced in ayahuasca experiences.
It reminded me of what I've experienced in ayahuasca, but even more intense. Yeah. So I started purging, and I think I purged probably 3 times, and it was deep. It was visceral. And even in that moment, after having all the diarrhea purge, I mean, I'm really getting personal on this podcast. Even after having all the diarrhea purge, and then that one vomiting session, I thought, how do I have all this? What's in me? What is it? How is there any food? How is there any liquid? How is there anything to purge out? I thought maybe that'd be the end of it. And then I went back to bed, and I was drinking coconut water, trying to keep some electrolytes and fluid going through me. And the diarrhea continued. So I went back to the bathroom and had more of that. And then a couple hours later, I felt myself getting really woozy again and sweaty and uncomfortable. And sure enough, I had to go outside. And I didn't even make it to the bathroom this time. I made it just outside the tambo that I was sleeping in. And again, started having really violent purging that wasn't connected. Didn't feel like, stomach poisoning or food poisoning or anything. It just felt like you said, like an ayahuasca purge, if anyone who's out there has done ayahuasca. And again, it was violent, and it just kept happening. And then, long story short, it happened a few hours later again. Actually, no, I'll put in some of the details. So I was hoping at that point that it was over, but it wasn't. And I had to purge more diarrhea. And I was laying in bed, and everybody else had gone down to the river to do an exfoliation with some cacao. And I was like, God damn it. Like they're down there having that experience, and I'm up here having this experience. And I thought I was by myself, and I was so miserable. And it was at this moment that I really broke down. I mean, I really, like, all my strength was gone, and I started weeping in my bed, weeping. And I started feeling like I was never going to get out of there. I thought this was it. Like, I started thinking about my family and my friends and my girlfriend and being back home. And I thought, man, it could not feel farther away than it does right now. And it's at that moment that you and Fred heard me and came into the room.
Such a synchronicity.
Yeah.
You know, thank you for sharing this, brother, by the way. That vulnerability is awesome. But when we came up to the Malacca, which was all the hike up from the river to check on you, we heard you from the distance, crying and moaning and being in deep fear, actually, right? And then we came in and you literally said, like, guys, I think I'm dying. I'm fucking dying. And you were in true terror and fear and panic.
Yeah,
right?
Well, because up until that moment, I thought I was accepting, like, this is just part of the journey. This is part of the purge that needs to happen. But after so many hours and losing so much fluid and having losing all my energy, essentially, I thought, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm actually sick. Maybe there's something really going on with me. So that's when you guys caught me.
Again, and Fred and me, we both knew in deep of this is a deep spiritual process, right? But also, hey, we want to make sure, be safe. I don't want to just, it's all spiritual. So, okay. Just in case, right? We connected with Javier and Claudia, the couple that owns the retreat, and there's a doctor in case, and we got you some medicine,
Just in case. I hadn't taken it at that point.
Yeah. Just in case. So there's the option, right? But it was interesting then also when Fred was me and Mate, right? And then we had to get you out of the room, like get out of this energy from the room, like the statement, like open the windows, open the door, get out. And you went outside, and then...
Well, thanks for Mate, another guy in the retreat. He opened up the doors, and he's like, Brother Benny, you have to get out of that bed. You have to come outside. Come on, let's get some air. And I was like, dude, I cannot move. Like, you don't understand. Like, please, not right now. And he's like, I'm not going to leave until you get up and get outside. You need it. And I was like, please, just leave me alone. I'm just going to get through this. And he's like, I'm not leaving. And he sat there on the floor by the door, and I was like, fuck, all right. So... I finally decided to stand up. I thought, okay, he's right. I can muster up whatever strength I have to get outside. And as soon as I stood up, I felt the same feelings sweep over me, but this time at both ends. Like, it was happening simultaneously. So I wobbled to the door and made it to the bathroom. And again, being vulnerable here, I let it rip. Like, I didn't even know to sit on the toilet or to perch my face over it because I didn't know what was going to happen first. Actually, I started off by sitting on it, but immediately I was like, that's not the right decision. So I jumped out of the toilet and started projectile vomiting more purge. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. It was never like the kind of vomit I've experienced because of food poisoning. It was different. It was like a purge. It wasn't connected to food. And I started purging, and then I had to get on the toilet and let more out from the other end, and then I went back and forth. And finally, I was vomit purging, and it was so intense that I felt like it was coming from my root, like from my pelvic floor, like so deep within me. Mm. And as it came out, I felt it end. I felt like it was all tapped out, and it was just like and then I knew it was over.
Yeah. There was not just a whoa. We heard it from the outside. There was some intense entity exorcism happening there. There was energetic stuff coming out.
Which makes sense. I mean, looking at it in like a spiritual sense, I mean, over the years, I've been going down the rabbit hole, quote unquote, the rabbit hole for 14 years. And I take on a lot of responsibility. I've been taking it on. I've been like taking one for the team. I'm like, okay, 9 out of 10 people aren't open to this stuff, so I'm going to be the one who does it, who exposes it, who presents it, who changes the world, and taking all that responsibility and not having any sort of proper release for that. Not having a place where I have my own practices, but not really allowing myself the space to really process and, get rid of that energy in another way. So it cleared me out. I cleared out so much in that moment. And then I knew as soon as it was over, I felt it. I was like, that was it. I got whatever wanted to come out, and it was done. And then I started feeling a little better. Then I was able to eat some soup. And
well, that was beautiful where we then set up in the Malacca, with our own sharing circle between the men. Yeah. It was beautiful. Like the warriors, just have a man circle and especially with our brothers, to share vulnerability and openness and really holding space for you was a beautiful moment. And the next amazing thing was because we missed actually dinner, right?
Yeah.
And then it was already night. The girls came up with the food, with plates and all of that to
was beautiful.
To the man and
So
fed us,
supportive.
and we all sat together.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
And then, so in the time that's passed since, I mean, with those subtle yet profound realizations I had during the ceremony itself, and then all the clearing that happened afterward, it's left me in this place ever since that feels like, I mean, it feels like I'm at chapter 2 of my life.
Now, you were going through an intense rebirth experience, brother.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something all died. I mean, that's almost
it's all
like
different
a shamanic
now.
initiation.
In a way, I feel like it's the way I was explaining this to someone the other day. I feel like I've hit the bottom of the rabbit hole. Yeah. I've been falling, and I feel like I hit the floor, and now I'm standing at the bottom going, okay, I get it. I see the way this system works. I see the control. I see the manipulation. I get it. I see the power that money has over people. I understand this on a spiritual level. I see it as this infection on earth and all of that. Now what? I've been spending so much time trying to avoid the monster and like call attention to it and yell at it and being angry at it. But now what? Okay, here I am, knowing that if I get too angry or too emotionally worked up, then I'm sacrificing that part of me over to the system itself, to the matrix, and I don't want to do that anymore. So where does that leave me? It leaves me in not a whole new path, but a more clear path. And I feel so much more grounded and ready to take on everything. And I mean, the way that everything is synced up, the timing of this retreat with what's happened this year in general, and on a personal level and on a political level and everything, it couldn't have been more perfect. So I don't say thank God, but thank Source, thank whatever that it happened when it did, because I would have very easily been caught up in all this election shit and the pedophilia stuff and the Pizzagate and the fake news. And I know that had it not been for this experience, I would have been so worked up and so angry and so, upset. And now I feel I'm just experiencing it, and I see the way it's working. I see it energetically, and I just can't sacrifice my energy at the altar of the matrix anymore.
Yeah, and also it activated or confirmed a new part of yourself that was born, and that was really manifested when you shared your poetry.
Oh,
Benny,
yeah. Full circle.
I can't wait for people to hear that, because first time you shared it was before the whole physical process happened for you at the night of the Wachuma ceremony. We were all sitting at the lodge and just really taking in nature and coming down from the medicine. It was beautiful. Everybody sitting together. And then you asked to share some poetry. Everybody said, yes, please bring it on. And speaking personally, I've never heard such profound work. And I'm not making that, to rub your ego or butt or whatever, but I truly mean it, right? I mean, I was really, and also not because I was just on the medicine, because I heard it then days after, sober too, had the same effect. The beauty of the words and what you've written, is so connected to something. It's almost like you're channeling in a form or downloading in the way you phrase the words and the topics, that hit really core, that hit something deeper than just my mind, right? And also the delivery, the way you. I remember one poem is like a story, like a dialogue with Bob.
It's called Bill Lost His Memory.
Exactly. That was amazing. And the way you build it up and the dynamics, and it's just a whole performance. It's not just the words, it's like, it's not that if you listen, you performing that poem is a whole different experience than reading it on your own as a text. Yeah,
and it's a whole different experience than creating a sketch comedy video for our YouTube channel. Yeah. And I mentioned it on a podcast recently, but this is the next phase of my artistic expression. I haven't. The writing and delivery of the poetry is the ultimate marriage so far in my life of my truth and my art. And 2017 is the year I'm going to unleash that to the world. And hearing feedback like that from you is so validating and so encouraging, and makes me very excited to share that part of myself. Because, this goes back in line with what I was just saying about not fighting anymore. Yeah. This is a contribution that is so honest and rooted in truth and my own personal truth. And I hope anyway, that it can help people.
Absolutely. I mean, like the reaction I had or response, everybody else at the lodge, everybody was blown away. I'm like, I didn't that was like out of the left field. I'm like, holy shit. Yeah. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Wow, that's so validating. And it's funny that poem you just mentioned. I spent a lot of time with Max Egan this summer, which was great. And he heard that poem 3 times. He even Skyped me once just so I could do it over Skype for him. So that also was very empowering. So it definitely, all these signs are
that's your medicine, you know, because I feel we all have in our lives like our own gift, our talent, which comes easy to us. But like me, that's why I'm so amazed. Like acting. So anyways, or just, like poetry, I love poetry, but to come up in such a way and on an embodied level, that's for me the function of art, to have that healing effect, right? And I think it builds beautifully also in your talent, what you have expressed yourself via JoyCamp, which is beautiful. It helps a lot of people to wake up on a certain level, right? But it's also from a true artist perspective to expand oneself, because your art always represents also your inner state.
Well, that's what I keep thinking when people, because we definitely get comments, people are like, you guys need to stick to sketches, what you're good at. I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah, okay, we're good at this one thing, but we're also human beings going on a journey, ever evolving. This is one aspect of who I am and what I've been doing. And yeah, it happened to tap into a certain frequency and it's been working, and it doesn't mean it's going to go anywhere, but there's also so much more to me and to what I can offer. And to say that you should just stick to this one thing because you're good at it is it's retarded. That's retarded. I'm sorry, that's retarded. No, let me be me, bro.
It's like fans of bands who want always to hear the same songs.
Yeah, exactly.
The emotional attachment from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and this is, like I said, this is utilizing. I spent a lot of years as a performer, as an actor, and doing a lot of stage work, and I loved being on stage and taking an audience on a journey. And this is a way to take an audience on a journey without using a character to tell the story. I'm no longer going to tell anyone else's story. Like, this is those skills, but giving my words rather than another writer's words, another character's story. So this is very personal. It's very exciting, and I'm so excited to see where that, opening up that path, that door will lead me from here on out.
And not to give too much away, but we have something planned for next year as well.
We do. Yeah. We don't want to give too much away. It's still in the works, but yeah, Bernhard and I and some others, Max Egan and some other friends of mine, are putting our heads together for some sort of event in the Southern California area in the not too distant future. Okay. So keep an ear out, eye out, whatever.
That's all what we shall say about that.
I've already said too much. But yeah, we're planning something here in LA, period. But you know what? We're actually over time. Right. We've talked more than we usually talk. So, but hey, it's been a pleasure. And I don't, if you stop listening at exactly 1 hour, then what am I going to say? Right. That's on you. And if you did, you're not even hearing this part of the podcast anyway. So there's also that. But man, we could just talk for hours. This is the way we talk. I mean, you and I always just shoot the shit.
One little thing I just wanted to say, which reminds me of the intense process you went through after the day after the Wachuma ceremony, the physical process. You confronted death. You actually confronted that which you had the realization from a more higher level when you were in the jungle. Yeah. And then you literally confronted death and went through your own death process. Right.
Yeah. It did feel like a death and rebirth. I mean, big time.
And I think that, also maybe on the closing note, what we also talked about, all of us at the retreat, because all of the people were pretty switched on. We're all on the same page on the basics of the matrix control and whatnot. But the internal process was very challenging for a lot of people, right? And what we realized, and I'm also not taking myself out of the equation, how difficult this process already has been for us, already aware on an intellectual level, quote unquote awake, which is a silly term. Overused. You're not awake if you don't know intellectually how the matrix works, maybe on some level, but not on an embodied level. But, considering how that inner work, how we all did together in a very supportive environment, and it was safe, but also very hard and challenging for us. You can only imagine how that process will be for people who are still fully plugged in and have no awareness, right? Mm-hmm. Because again, it's not just about the logical process of convincing people with facts and logic. If their inner wiring, if they're not able to receive it on a frequency level, everybody needs to go through this process themselves on their personal level. And that's, again, not easy work. And I feel personally, what I bring back from these retreats for me personally, a lot of gratitude and humility as well, right?
Humility. People can only, quote unquote, wake up at their own pace. Yes. You can offer breadcrumbs, you can encourage, you can even open the door sometimes, but it's ultimately them making the choice. No matter how much you yell, no matter how much you scream, no matter how honest and even heart-centered you are, people are only going to receive it when they're ready. And that's bottom line. Yeah. So that's why the personal work and the embodiment is so important. Yeah. On that note, Bernhard, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. And remember, if there is hope, it lies in the proles. Thanks for listening, everybody.